All right, part two of our video. We have already talked about the actual Illinois NDPA itself. So now we are going to go into the SDPC database. First, we're going to talk about getting an account, getting it all set up there. Then we're going to talk about navigating the database. We're going to start with how to search for agreements that might already be out there. And hey, if you find one, how to piggyback onto it by using their Exhibit E. If you don't find an agreement that's already out there, then how do we search for requests? You know, has another district already put in a request to that operator? And if they have, you don't need to double up on that. Okay, maybe there aren't any requests out there for what you're looking for, so how do we reach out to an operator? I'll give you some of my tips that I've used in order to get some originating agreements. Then, once we have reached out to them, we need to go ahead and add that into the database as a request so that everybody else in the state knows that we are reaching out. We'll talk a little bit about how you can set up progress workflows, which allow you to keep track of where you are in the process of communicating with that operator. And then once you've got an agreement, we'll talk about how to add it into the database. And then lastly, we'll talk about the customized resource listing tool and the digital resource request form. Two things that SOPA requires and the SDPC database gives to you for free. So let's jump over to the website itself. Here I am at sdpc.a4l.org. That's our website where we are going to go and log in, set up our account, everything we need to do. So to get an account, if you've never been in here before, you can scroll down and go to select a state. So I'm going to go in and choose Illinois and visit our alliance. So the color of the page changes, that's about all. But now down here at the bottom, I can request an account. When I do that, I'm going to first, it takes me back to having to select my state again. So I'll do that, Illinois. And then if you can find yourself here on the left side, that means that somebody in your district has already actually set up an account. But probably you're going to need to go ahead and request an account. And from this drop-down menu, you can select your school district. You can see we still have a lot of work to do to get districts into the database. And once you've selected it, you're going to be able to fill out your contact info. And this request will go directly to the LTC, and then they will approve you. And once you get approved, you'll be able to come back to our Illinois website and go to this login screen up in the corner. And once we log in, we now have access to everything that all of the other districts have been uploading to the database. So let's start with, I've got an operator, I want to get an originating contract, what do? Well, my first step is to come over to your district agreements and look at all state DPAs. This is going to give you a list of all of the statewide signed DPAs for Illinois. And even though we haven't gone too far into this process, there's still a lot of things in here. The most important thing about this page is to sort this table by originator. All of the fields that have this icon in the originator column are originating contracts. These are the ones you want to search for. So for example, if I was looking for an originating contract with Seesaw, I can come over here to the search bar, start typing in Seesaw, and if one of them pops up with the bullseye, that means I've got an originating agreement and I can piggyback off of it. You'll notice this also lists all of the other school districts that are piggybacking off of the originating contract. If this is the case, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to first open up the top link here, which will give me the entire contract. And it's important that I look over the entire contract because if I scroll through here, and there is not a signature from the operator, that's a problem. I'm going to want to look at Exhibit B and see whether or not these data elements that are being collected are something that I agree with. I'm going to want to go down to Exhibit H, and I'm going to look to see if there were any unique terms or modifications that were agreed upon between that district and the operator. Now, if all of this looks good, then I'm going to come back to the database and I'm going to click on the Exhibit E. And this will give me that one-page document that I can print out, sign, and upload back into the database. And at that point, I am done and covered for that operator. It's good to know that if I piggyback off of an agreement, my agreement also ends at the same time that the originating agreement ends. So keep that in mind as you're renewing this in another 3 years. By the way, that is always 3 years from the date that it was originally approved. So let's say I want to piggyback on this seesaw agreement. I printed out my Exhibit E, I've got it signed, ready to go. I'm going to come here to my district agreements and I'm going to add a new agreement. In this case, I do have a signed contract. That's my Exhibit E. And I'm going to choose the type of agreement that I'm going to be uploading. And in this case, I'm going to upload the national agreement as a subscribing district. So I'm going to choose that link. And the first thing the database is going to make me do is choose the originating agreement that I am piggybacking onto. So this will list all of the ones that are out there, and I'm going to go ahead and choose the seesaw one in this case. And here I have the agreement type. That is correct. Now when I continue, and I'm not going to do this time because it'll add it into my database, the next page will ask you to upload your own Exhibit E. And the nice thing about this is when this is displayed to your community on your forward-facing database website, it will show the originating contract. You don't have to do anything with that. And then it'll show your Exhibit E. And I'll give you an example of that in a little bit. But that's all I need to do if I am piggybacking off of a originating agreement. But let's say that I did not find what I was looking for. So maybe I search for Loom and nobody has a signed agreement for Loom yet. My next step then is I'm going to go into my resources, and the bottom link here says view statewide new requests. So this is going to be a list of all of the resources that have been requested by any district in Illinois. If a district reaches out to an operator, they should come in here and add it as a new request to let everybody else know, hey, I'm working on this. So this is very similar to the other page. In the search bar, I can type in Loom and I can see, oh, look, I actually do have a couple of districts who are currently reaching out to Loom. Great. So I now get to decide, do I want to take my time to reach out to them as well, or do I just want to subscribe to the progress that somebody else is undertaking here? In this case, I think it is the best idea to spread ourselves out as much as we can to cover as many resources as possible and not double up. So in this case, I would not reach out to Loom. I would go to the next operator on my list for my district and I would search for them. But let's say I search for something like ABC, right? And it's not in here. Okay, so there's no signed agreement and there is no resource request out there. That means now I need to reach out to that company myself. So when I've gone through this process, what I typically do is I start by going over here to the left side of the screen and searching the national database for whatever resource it is that I'm about to kind of initiate this contract for. So here under search by resource, I'm going to open that up and I'm going to type in whatever it is I'm looking for. So in this case, I said ABC, and I'll choose one of those options and search. Now this is searching the entire nation for any agreements that are out there for that product. Here I have found a few. Turns out this one's not a great example because we don't have any approved contracts that are sitting out there with them. So let's go to another one. We'll go to Crisis Go. That was the example that I had used earlier in my other video. So I'll search the entire nation, and you'll see here I have 5 entries, and a couple of these are actually from Illinois, which is great. And now there's a lot that I can do with this information. The first thing is you may have information filled in here under vendor contract info. And if you do, that is fantastic because you can copy this email address and you can use that as one of the initial people that you reach out to yourself. I have done that a lot. And even if this was a California specific individual, they have always been able to put me in contact with the right person because they have some knowledge of SOPA. They have some knowledge of the National Data Privacy Agreement already. Okay, so that's great. What else I can do here is I can open up one of the agreements that they have with another district, and I can scroll through and I can see whether or not they have contact info in their full agreement. This one, it looks like they do not have it here. We'll jump down to their Exhibit E and see if they have anything down in their Exhibit E. They do not. Oh, yes, they do. I'm sorry. It's right down here at the bottom. So I have an email address. Fantastic. That gives me some person I can reach out to. Now, sometimes you're going to have a contact yourself because it's a company that you work with often, and that's great. That's fine. But this is a good additional person that you could put on that initial email. Now, what I'll do is when I send out the email to the operator, I'll put in some info about how, in Illinois, we are just starting this process, but I'm reaching out to all of my third-party operators. Hey, it looks like your organization has already filled in a National Data Privacy Agreement, and I will even attach that to the email that I send out to them. Gives them kind of a nice maybe a little kick in the butt to say, hey, you've already done this at some point, so this should be pretty easy for you to follow up and do with us as well. Okay, so I have sent out an email to this operator. My next step is that I'm going to come back into my district agreements and I'm going to add a new request. Since I have now reached out to this organization, I want to let everybody else in Illinois know that I have started this process and they may not need to start it themselves. So I come over to District Agreements and New Request, and I'm going to select the resource. So in this case, since I was just working with them, I could say Crisis Go. And you're going to choose the grades that this is applicable to in your district, the content area. I will usually fill in the requester email address, and the date that I sent that off to the vendor. Nothing else I'll fill in. And then this will automatically go and populate in the statewide new request area. And other people will be able to find that. Now, the next step, in my mind, and you'll notice that not everybody is doing this piece in the database right now, which is completely fine. But I noticed that when I came into here, this progress column was always blank and the last modified date was always blank. And I figure if we're going to use this to help each other out, to see the progress on these contracts throughout the state, I wanted to know how to fill these things in. So it turns out that this progress column is based off of a section in the database that is called your progress workflow. That's under account management. And when you come into here, every district is able to set up their own progress workflow. So this is not something that's standardized across the state. I think it would be nice if we had a similar experience across districts, but it doesn't need to be that way. So personally, I set up 4 different steps. And what you do is you give the step a name, you give it a number in order, and then you can set up an email message that will be sent out when you progress through these different steps. So for example, when I send out an initial communication to an operator, I will set the workflow at number 1, request sent. And then anybody who I have chosen within my district to receive this email will get an email that says, hey, Crisis Go has been updated to workflow step 1 and the request has been placed. And then as I update that throughout the process, it will kick off these emails with these different messages. But the real nice thing is really not for my individual district. Although that might be nice for a larger district who might have a technology director who starts with step 1, but once they get all the way down to obtaining the Exhibit E, they may have a different person in the district assigned to go in and complete the upload of the contract itself. So you can definitely assign different users within your district these different tasks. But the value to me is that when I go into the statewide new requests and I set the progress to request sent, that now notifies everybody in the state when they're looking at this that I'm on this step with that operator, and it tells me the date that was done. So right now I know that Lake Zurich is in communication with School Cloud Systems about the resource Meet the Teacher. They've sent something to them, and they sent it around the 4th of January, but they haven't gone any further than that. I also know, and this is good for me because I need to get an agreement with Canvas, I know that Lake Zurich is really close to an originating contract with Canvas. They just have contract modifications pending. And that change was updated just on the 20th of January. So I'm not going to reach out to Canvas because I don't need Canvas to be spending extra time managing multiple data privacy agreements with different districts. They have it going with Lake Zurich, and when it's completed, I'll come back in and I will try to piggyback off of that. So if I go later into this list here, I'm going to get to the Olympia ones. So these are the Olympia requests that I have sitting out there now, and you'll see that each one of them has, a detailed description of the step and stage in the process that I'm currently in. And I think that just makes things more transparent for everybody across the state, and it allows them to make informed decisions on what they want to do and who they want to reach out to. So that's the progress workflow piece. So next up would be I have received a signed originating agreement from an operator, and I want to put it into the database. That's an exciting time. So when you get that back, you read through it. If everything looks great, then you sign off on what you need to sign off on, and then you're going to bring that document and the Exhibit E of that document into this your district agreements. And then since you've already put it in as a request, you can go into your manage agreements area, and let's say, for example, I actually have an agreement now with 8 to 18. I'm going to come here and I can change the agreement type. And when I do that, I'm going to now choose that I have a national standard agreement with an exhibit and I'm the originating district. So I go ahead and choose that. Now, this piece I had mentioned before, but you're going to choose that it is the Illinois NDPA. It's the only option you have. You put in the date that it was approved, and then 3 years from that date is when it expires. So you put that in. And then this spot is where you need to put in the email address that all future Exhibit E's that piggyback on your originating agreement will automatically be sent to. So you got to make sure that you get that from the operator, that they have a contact email address. Then you're going to upload your signed agreement. You're going to switch the status from request to active. Now there are other options here, so something like approved, no data collected. If you get an agreement back from somebody that says we don't collect any data at all, then great, that's fine, that's good to know. You can still put it in here all the same, but just choose approve and no data collected. You can also put in any of these other options. So if you want to say it was declined, great, go ahead and put that in, not a problem at all. And then I'm not going to go to the next screen because this will change the way my agreement is set up in here, but the next screen would have you upload the Exhibit E specifically. Right? So you're going to upload two different things, the full signed agreement and then the Exhibit E. So we're close to being done with that. The last step here is that you would want to go to a new screen, one we haven't been to yet. Under your resources, you'll go to manage resources. Now there are a few kind of unique things that you can do on this screen. So one that is valuable is to go to edit contact info and put in the contact info of the person that you've been working with. Because what that will do is, I'm going to go back to the all state DPAs here. Oh, not that one. Let me go back to the national database where we were before. When somebody searches for your agreement, that spot is what fills in this vendor contact info. So that is very, very useful for other districts who might be searching for somebody to contact. So there's the contact info. The other piece that's in here is a box for purpose. I don't know why it's hidden in this area, but this is super important too, because one of the SOPA requirements is that you provide what the purpose of each one of these operators provide, what they give for you. So this is the spot that you can fill this in. I will also say, practically speaking, right now, that is the spot that I am using to upload the subprocessor list. So right now the SDPC database does not have a good way to track the subprocessors. I hope that they add that soon, but we have to provide that. So what I have done is I've gone ahead and put a link to the subprocessor list for the ones that I've gotten the originating agreements for here in the purpose. And I'll show you in a moment why I put it there, but because this field is green, that means it's going to be showing to the public. So I want that to be showing to the public because it needs to be. So this is really the one place I can find to put that without making like an entirely separate website or a spreadsheet that contains all the processing lists. And then the last piece that we've got to do here is the data elements. So you'll notice that it's available for every one of the resources that you've uploaded, and by default there's just nothing in here. So if you never come to this spot and put in your data elements, that's a huge gap in the SOPA requirements that you've got. So let's say I got my agreement from 8 to 18. I need to come to this data elements page. I need to have my my Exhibit B of my contract here, my agreement. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to choose all of the data elements that the operator says that they obtain. And as I said in the other video, you might have a situation where the operator says, we will accept this from you. So they check the box in the agreement, but it might be that your district does not actually send something specific, like guidance counselor. So because this is going to be public facing, I only want my community to see and understand what we are actually sending to them. So even though Crisis Go may say we accept the guidance counselor if you send it, since I'm not sending it, I'm going to take it off the list. And then you can save all of this, and it's now going to show up on your website. Now, I've talked about this forward-facing website a couple of times, so let's go ahead and look at that, and those will be our last two pieces here. So under Tools, you have a Customize Resource Listing and a Digital Resource Request Form. The Customize Resource Listing is the website that is automatically generated by the SDPC that will show all of the agreements that you have entered into. So there's a link that will show it to you right away. But before you do that, you may want to click on this Editing of District Account Information. This lets you put in some info that will show up on that site, including a logo. You get to choose whether or not you want to show links to the privacy policy and terms of service for the operators. And then maybe most important, there's this section where you get to put in custom text. So if there are pieces that you want to describe to your community, you can put it all into there. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that site and click on that link and show you what this then looks like. So here is ours. I have this linked off of our main technology website. You'll see we have a logo. This is the software name and the purpose. So you remember that field where we had to fill in purpose. And if we come down to something like Kahoot, you can see here's my subprocessor list. So if somebody wanted to see the subprocessors for Kahoot, they could copy that and they could go and they can look at it. It'll also show the status of the agreement. So for something that may not collect any data, you can change that agreement status to reflect it. It has links to the full agreement and the Exhibit E. So for example, let's find one here. Learning A to Z is one that I did not have an originating agreement for. I just signed on to the Exhibit E. So when I click on the agreement, it automatically shows me the agreement for Harvard Community Unit School District. But when I click on the Exhibit E, it shows me the Exhibit E from that contract that I signed myself. Again, all of this happens automatically once you put that information into the database. It shows when they expire, when they were approved, all of this data that you had entered in, and then hovering over the magnifying glass at the end will show you all of the data elements that is used by that service. And what's nice here is this search box up at the top allows you to search for pretty much anything. So if I wanted to search for Calvert, I could do that. It would pull it up. If I wanted to search for anything that is used in math, I can do that, and it will pull all of those up. I can even search for specific data elements. So I can type in like date of birth, and now it's only going to show me those items that have the data element of date of birth. So that's a pretty flexible tool that you and the community can leverage. So the final piece is the resource request form. So again, under Tools, you can go to this digital resource request form. It looks very similar to that other page, and it gives you a link that you can put onto your website, which I have done. Also, from this page up here at the top, you'll see, hey, if you're a staff member looking at this list because you're trying to see whether or not the district has an approved contract with what you're interested in, and you don't see it here, you can click on this link and it'll take you right to the resource request form. So as a teacher, what you can do here is you can type in a tool like Crisis Go, and what you'll see here is that if the name does show up on this drop-down list, then what that means it's already in the SDPC database someplace. So what they should instead do is come here to select a resource, and then they can type in or search for that resource's name. So let's say I was looking for Ames Web Plus. And you'll notice, hey, wait a minute, Ames Web Plus has already been requested by the district, so no big deal, you don't have to worry about that one. If it was another one, I haven't done anything with Arduino, and it takes them right to here where they can fill in a vendor name, an email address if they happen to have it. They don't have to do this, they can hit continue without doing it, but if they have any of that information, it will automatically feed into the SDPC database, which is super convenient for somebody like me because I will get notified, I can then go in, I can see that information, and I can reach out more quickly. So thank you for sticking around. I hope that seeing some of this in with real examples helps you kind of work your way through the use of this database. And the ultimate goal is to get as many people in here as possible, filling out these requests and agreements as efficiently as possible so that we don't do any extra work than we already need to do. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my info up here on the screen. I'm happy to do a video chat or an email or anything in order to clear up any questions that you may have.